So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker and welcome Carol Alayne. Carol, whose biography you have on your notes on speakers, is a bespoke women's tailor. She's been working in the industry for around 30 years, and before that she was working in the banking industry. Arguably, therefore, she got considerable exposure and training in tailoring from just looking around at her colleagues in that industry, but I'm sure she'll speak more about that. She is one of the very few women tailors on Savile Row, and women tailors who cater for women, not for men. And she's going to be talking this afternoon about some of the history of the tailoring industry and also about her own work and what kind of guides and inspires her in some of the work that she continues to make from Savile Row for women today. So please welcome with me Carol Alayne for our first talk.
Thank you very much, Joe. First of all, can everybody hear me all right? Yep, that's fine. Okay, well, as Joe said, my role here in this event is to talk a little bit about the bespoke tailoring tradition. And I'm going to touch on a history, just a little bit of history. And then I'm going to tell you what I do, what is a bespoke tailor, and what is my job. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about where we go from here with the craft. All right, so first of all, a little bit of history. Bespoke tailoring is actually a product of the 13th century. And the coat, which is a walk-in garment, supplanted the climb-in tunic. So at that time, people were layering these garments, which were very loose-fitting, and they were just slipping them over their head or climbing into them. And this newfangled garment that came on the scene with its wacky button system and everything was quite interesting because it was put together in sections. Hence the word tailler, which means to cut from the French language. And the tailor cut these pieces in sections, put them together, and we had this new garment called the coat. Now here we have an old block print, and I like this very much because it shows, even back then, that they were working on this garment called a hooped petticoat, which was actually about exaggerating the human form. So people were wearing garments that were very much outside, and it wasn't about enhancing the body contours as they were, it was about enlarging on them. So then, about 100 years later in the 14th century, it became fashionable to add a padded layer to clothing. And not to enhance, but to sort of create a new sculpture around the body. So instead of following the body contours, this fabric was laying over a structure that was built up. And because the fabric was then very neat and very tidy over these layers, then the garment wasn't affected by the body's wrinkly movements. So it held this structure. And over time, the padding was extended from the chest area to the shoulder, into the sleeves, and even into the stomach area. Savile Street was named after Lady Dorothy Savile, who was the wife of the Earl of Burlington. And Savile Street was a collection of buildings at the end of the estate. And that was the first emergence of the street, so from the very beginning, it had a woman's influence. That the silhouette of garments became very neat and tidy and fitted, and also very unfussy. So the emphasis on a fine tailored piece was now down to fit instead of fuss, and instead of all these built-up, padded bits of understructure. We see that we're very much following the body contours there. There's a little bit of understructure, but the key here is fit. So we've got a clean garment, a very unfussy, a tightly cut garment, and this flawless lay of cloth over the structure. Now, around this time, we started to hear about a vocabulary in tailoring. And I'll just point out on this piece here, because these are details that you can see from a great distance away. These are things that people agree on. that a tailored piece should contain. And first and foremost, what you want to see is, on all the curved edges, you want to see a slight curve into the body. Okay, so this garment isn't flapping out, it isn't sticking out. Everything is rolling nicely, with no stress or anything from the shoulder to these buttons areas. The pockets are closed, they're staying nice. When they're not in use, they're not gaping. The vents are to lay closed. The sleeve is to be pitched absolutely perfectly. And what that means is, if you were to, this is the pitch of the sleeve as it should hang. If it were to go a little bit too forward, you get this creasing here. If it were to go a little bit too far back, you get trouble here. So the pitch of the sleeve, beautiful detail, form and structure. And this started a vocabulary that is still in use today. And everybody, as I said, agrees on this. So now we move on to today and what is happening in the world of women's tailoring. Obviously, women have made huge advances in their role in society. But oddly enough, tailoring has changed very little in the last 100 years. There have been advancements in new machinery and new materials and new methods of construction, but we tailors continue to operate in much the same way. Not because slower is better, but because this is the only sure way to get body and form and detail and durability, long life in the garment. So we hang on to these techniques and we practice them just as they did 100, 200 years ago. It is an interesting thing to know, too, that with the tailored garment, although we do use machines for some of the longer seams, that 3/4 of the stitches in this coat are still done by hand, because that is the only way to ensure that stability and that structure. I've got a couple of tools here that are really special. They were given to me by my mentor, and he inherited them from his. And together, this cushion and this lovely thing, block of wood called a clapper, together, these are as old as tailoring itself. They're special because, for example, this block of wood, when you press a seam, you can put this over it. It has weight, and also the wood draws the moisture out of the fabric and creates a knife-creased seam that will stay in the garment for ages and sort of set the posture for it. And then as you care for these garments over time, they are structured from the beginning. And this is called a tailor's cushion, and for some reason, it happens to have just about every curve that you need somewhere on it to press certain areas of the piece that you're working on. So this is kind of midway between a large pressing board and a smaller sleeve board. And this takes the weight as well, because tailoring can be quite a muscular job. You know, it takes a lot of heat and pressure to mold a garment. And again, these are things that you can only do by hand and do one at a time. These are things that would be very difficult to automate. So we're going to move on now to my role as a bespoke tailor. And I think there's 3 things involved here. I'm going to start with the first one, which is the physiology. Now, what we have to do when we meet a client, we have to make this evaluation. We have to summarize the skeleton and also the molding around the skeleton so that we can take this mental picture back to the cutting board and get busy on a pattern. Now, we've got 5 here, but I can assure you there's hundreds more. And I've never seen 2 alike. And in fact, sometimes in a seminar we'll ask people to go around the room and find somebody that has a similar figure type to theirs, and it's not easy to do. But we have to make these kind of determinations. And also, we have to figure out ways that we might fill in and balance out these proportions. Now, when people, excuse me, I'll be with you in a minute. When people come for their first consultation, They, is somebody knocking? People are natural apologists, and they sometimes, like when you go to a doctor or an accountant or a lawyer, you tend to open up with an apology. And I haven't really looked after things, or I'm sorry about this or sorry about that. And so one of the tricks we use is, or it's not a trick, it's a rule, it's a number one rule, and that is hide the mirror. Don't let them see themselves. Because the tendency is so strong to, suck your gut in and stand up straight. And if we made a suit to fit that form, well, it would only fit in front of a mirror, and that wouldn't be any good, would it? So we're making this assumption and getting ourselves started on the pattern work and taking that mental picture back to the cutting table so that we can get going. Now, there's a few measurements particularly important for women, and I'd like to show them to you, but I'd like some help. And I'm just wondering if anybody would like to just come up here and I'm not going to measure you, but I'm just going to show you how important the measurements are. Does anyone want to? Any volunteers? Madam, come on. And this is where the science of tailoring is so different. This is what separates the art of tailoring for men from women. Hello there. Thank you for doing this. You're very brave. Now, a lot happens on a female form from the shoulder to the hip. We all know that. We don't have to go into that. And that's what makes it complex when you go to buy something, when it's standardized measured. But we're all different. And so the first thing that we have to get right is the balance of the coat, and that is how the garment fits front to back. That's perfect, just what you were doing. Now mine, that is a nasty thing. Yes. So we want to make sure that when the jacket sits, it's level. It's level to the floor. It's perfectly parallel. And we do that by working out a balance measurement. So what we would do first is we'd start from the floor, and we'd pick a point from the floor up, and we would mark that point on the client. Maybe put a pin in the front of your jacket, in the back of your jacket. We know that's level to the floor. And then we take the tape, we take a measure from the center back to that point, record that, and then take another measurement from the center back over the bust and record the measurement to that pin that's parallel and level with the other one. And we already know the relationship between the front and the back on the pattern, so we use that as a starting point, and then we work with this measurement that we've taken from you and work that into those measurements, okay? Now there's two more. Well, let's do three more. Let's do three more. The other one is, this one is called the depth of sigh. Now this is, I'm just going to take the tape here, okay? This one goes high up under the arm, level with the floor, and we want to know the distance between the nape of the neck and the depth of sigh. And that's very important because if you have the depth of sigh is this line here where the underarm sits. If it's too low, let's see if I can do this. If it's too low, then you're quite restricted. If it's higher up, then you've got all this mobility. So that's why this measurement is quite crucial, okay? And then the other two are related to the bust, and that's center back. Now we'll just move you here this way. So we take a measurement from the nape of the neck to the bust point, and then we take a final measurement, which is bust point to bust point. Now we know where the darting system should go in relation to the center front, and then we know that jacket is going to fit your figure. Okay. So thank you very much. That's what I wanted to show. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the technique. Now, we hear that it takes about 10,000 hours to learn a skill. And I think that's just about right, but we don't have that kind of time now, so I'm just going to summarize a few things. We're going to start by selecting some cloth to make something in, okay? And it might be plain cloth, it might be a patterned. This is quite a challenging piece because, in fact, this is a one-way plaid. And what that means is there's no symmetry in this design. You see that it goes, you've got a blue stripe and then a red, and then blue, red, blue, red. It just goes one way. So in fact, this coat was a very tricky problem because this plaid has to go all the way around. Okay? So that posed challenges in this direction and also in this direction to get all these stripes to match. But again, that's part of the hallmark of a fine tailored piece. And that's one thing that we always strive to do. Then we're going to take our fabric and we're going to prepare it, make sure the grain is straight and it's lying correctly. And then once our pattern is done, we're going to lie the pattern on the cloth and we're going to cut it. But while we're doing that, we're going to be thinking ahead. We're going to be thinking way ahead, 20, 25, 30 years. Because what we want to do is build in the provision of this garment so that it can be rebalanced, it can be altered, either way. Be taken in or can be let out. And we're going to look after this piece for the life of the garment. So we are very much looking to that point in time and covering all those eventualities. So then the pattern is placed on the cloth, it's cut, and now we're going to put together and offer up this first trial run of this garment, and that's called the first baste. And that's put together with very loose cotton, because we're going to have to take it apart before it's finished. So we put that together, then we call the client in and we look at it. We look at it together. And we make sure that the client is happy, and we listen to any other details that they may want or things they want taken away. We look for the first time at the proportion of this garment. And then this is the point we let the client in on it. We bring the mirror out. And then they see themselves in this garment. And we look at it together and we respond to what they feel about it. And then they go away. There might be some chalk marks, there might be some pinning in it, there might be some adjustments I want to make. And then that garment is taken apart. And based on what I see and what I mark and what the customer says, and probably a few other things, I will redirect the runs in this garment, re-chalk it, recut it, and then put it together again. Now at this point, if I have the confidence of the client and she and me, we might just go straight and finish it up. If there's a few other dilemmas or things they're not quite sure about, then we might have a second fitting. But generally we try to get it all done in the one fitting and then go to the finish. Now, we have a network on Savile Row of outworkers, specialist outworkers who work in this discipline, this art. And we're very, very lucky to have coat makers and waistcoat makers and trouser makers and specialists in outdoor gear like breeks and shooting garments, technical pieces, overcoats. And this creates a very smooth running system so that if a coat maker is producing a first baste, hands it over to me, and then he can get on with another one. And this just keeps going. So I'm sure you can appreciate, if you've got a full order book, the timing of all of this. And also this coat maker might work for several other cutters. And same with the waistcoat makers and same with the trouser makers. So we've got a community of garments, and they're all running around, they're crisscrossing all over the place. Some are in fitting stage, some are finished, some are going to buttonholers, some are going to the clipper to get felled, and felling is just a hand stitch. Some of them are getting pressed, and so this is why Savile Row is such a wonderful community of people, because we're all there, the makers and the haberdashers and the cloth merchants and the workers, and like I said, it's just this great hub of activity. All day and sometimes all night. That's another thing. Because if you've got a client that's come into town late or needed something in emergency, then this community of people do tend to work very closely together. They're very loyal to each other and will pull out all the stops and get things done. So it's a fantastic tradition and a great place to work. Now that brings us to what I think is the third element in my role as a tailor, and that's the psychology of getting dressed. Now, this is a complex arena, I think, and I think particularly more so for women. We have our own image of ourselves, and I've chosen this slide because we notice her. She obviously has a vision of herself, and that's reflected back to her. And what a great, powerful thing it would be, as Robert Burns said, if we had the talent to see ourselves as others see us. But the idea of what should I wear and who should I be is quite a complex one, and it's something that we talk about all the time with our clients. The one thing that women say to me more often than not is that they feel that they have a problem with confidence in getting ready for an event or building a wardrobe, much more so than men. And even when they get something that's right, then suddenly it isn't right, and they don't know why. And I think it's because we don't have a uniform in the same way that men do. I mean, we don't have this shirt and a tie and this ease of getting dressed, and it's something we all envy, I think, with men, because we consider it quite easy to just get up, put on the same uniform, with a splash of a tie or a different shirt or something. But yet, must be a lot of security in that. And we've tried to evolve the suit, particularly for the workplace, and it's worked, but it hasn't. And I think women still strive for the uniform of their own, and it has a lot to do with their own personal style. I think that's what they want at the end of the day. They want to look, particularly for the clients that I work with at a certain level, with a certain set of requirements, they want to look modern, and they want to look like they have authority, but not boring. And they want to look feminine, but they don't want to look fussy, and they don't want to look too influenced by fashion. They want to make their own statement. So there's all these things that are bouncing around, and we have to try to find something for them and make them feel comfortable. Another thing women say to me is that they're quite overwhelmed by fashion, and by having so many choices makes it even harder. And they say they're afraid of getting it wrong. They say they don't want to make that mistake where someone tells them the clothes are wearing you, you're not wearing them. And another thing they say to me is that they do give up a lot of opportunities to be the one charging ahead and getting this career sorted out. And that leaves them feeling a little bit guilty, and sometimes their image is the last thing they think about. And I remember one of the companies I started when I moved to London in the late 80s was called the Concert Store, and I dressed a lot of musicians. And I'd be called in, and they would say to me, I don't know why the agent is making me do this. I don't care what I really look like. It's the performance that's important. I need to practice. I don't have time for this. But then they soon realized that actually they're a product on stage, and they're part of that image and that impression that the audience takes home with them. So not only do they have to play well, but they have to be concerned about getting another booking. And everyone is concerned about that, keeping that going. So the image, they began to realize, is quite important. And now if you look at the music magazines, you can see that in some cases that's all that's important. Now I'm a bespoke tailor, and we all know what that's about, and we know it's a very personal business, and it's based on relationships, and it's based on craft. And we know that the difference between these garments and most everything else is vast. But look at this now. Look at what we've got. Look what they've done with this word. It now pertains to everything from a holiday to a hubcap. And I look at this and I think, well, where's the collaboration here with these products? Where's the relationship? Where's the participation with the end user here? And I think this whole thing is getting very confusing for both men and women. But I think for the moment we're just concerning ourselves with women. We're going to stay with this and talk about where we go from here with women. And what I wanted to say is, a little while ago, I left the Savile community and I set up something that I've been thinking about for a long time. And I wanted to put something in place that was just for women, with a women's set of workers. And so this is what I did. I think this sums up where the company that I own and run is headed. And I put this in quotes, but it's actually the sum total of something that I've been hearing for so long. And this has been said to me by so many people, that they want to take their wardrobe as seriously as they take the rest of their careers. They want to match that investment in their education, and in their retirement plan, and in their family plan, and their address. And they want to put the same effort in because they know that image matters. Now, we know a few things about the rise of women in the workforce. And we know that there's more and more women entrepreneurs out there, and that figure is growing, and it's growing very fast. We also know that there's a record amount of women that have enrolled in prestigious MBA programs, and that figure is rising. And we must remember to not dress like a student once we get that degree, and that's very important. We know that the man and woman wage gap is closing, and if we believe the Financial Times, we're told that in less than 10 years, that over half of the global wealth is going to be in the hands of women. So they're out there, they're making decisions, and they're rising to prominent positions, and they have to be concerned about how they look. Now, women say to me, as I said before, more often than not that they want a uniform, but they want that uniform to be their own. And if they're going to invest in this, and we're going to take care of that investment because we're going to be here to look after the clothes, and once we arrive at what they want, we'll be able to replicate it, and we'll be able to send some to New York, and some to Tokyo, and some to LA, and that's how it works. And we can help them with that wardrobe planning, because we know that they're going to be in the public eye. We know if we give them something that they really and truly like and they feel comfortable in, and they can get their act together and get on with business, then that's so comfortable for them. We know that because they can reach for these garments with confidence. Another statistic which comes in many forms is how important it is when people look at us and how quickly they make these first impressions. Now, there's a lot of prominent women in focus. We're constantly talking about them, and we're constantly assessing them. And when women do come to me, sometimes they'll talk about some of the women that you see here, politicians and leaders of industry, and all ages and all shapes and all sizes. And sometimes my clients will identify with one of these faces and say, yes, but I don't want to do that, or I particularly like that. I really like that suit on the lower left, right there, because it's a long time since I've seen a red power suit. But I think that's a great color. It's also a color that anybody can wear. And that's another thing I really do believe in. And that is the science of color. And I think that's a very good place to start when you're building a wardrobe, is to find out what your color palette is and what your skin and your complexion and everything responds to. So women are continuing to tell us what they want, and we're responding because that's what tailoring is all about. It's very much a responsive business. Now we want our clients to be very comfortable, and we want them, as I said before, we want them to help get their mental act together so they can get on with their job. And that's why we're here. And that is what Tailoring for Women will continue to do. So thank you very much for listening.